Hi, everybody. This is Tracy Malone. I am the founder of NarcissistAbuseSupport.com. I am a coach for victims of abuse as well as a divorce coach through their narcissistic divorces. Today, I've got a very special guest, and I've invited Susan Guthrie here today to talk to us about when you need to change a lawyer midstream. So many of my clients have been to 2, 3, 4 lawyers, and I want to know what the risks are. What are they entitled to? What's the game when you're switching lawyers, and how do you do it correctly? And we're going to have this great conversation because it's not talked about very often. And yet so many of my clients, and I know high conflict clients, end up with more than one lawyer. So let's talk to Susan, get the facts, and understand what to expect, what you're entitled to, and how to navigate this new lawyer. So here we go. Let's welcome Susan. Welcome, Susan. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Oh, Tracy, I'm so happy to be here with you again and to get a chance to get caught up and to share with your listeners.
Yeah, well, you and I go way back, and we've made a lot of videos together, and you're such a wealth of information. Can you just start off, before we start this interview, can you tell people about you? Because I couldn't put it all in, like, it's really long. There's so much about you, and just tell us who you are.
Well, it's really long because I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been for 32 years, I have been a family law attorney. So that's my original, profession, family law attorney and litigator, transitioned to being a family law mediator. And these days I'm actually more a speaker on all things divorce, a trainer in mediation, an online mediation expert. And I really try to get out as much as I can to educate and inform people about the divorce process, because as both of us know, often misinformation or misunderstandings lead people down a path that isn't a very good one for them or for their family. And if they had just had some knowledge ahead of time, they might have chosen a different path. So I try to speak about it as much as possible.
And you're doing an amazing job. People should definitely check out your podcast, and it is divorceandbeyondpod.com, right?
Yes, the Divorce and Beyond podcast, but that's the website, Divorce and Beyond Pod.
Yeah, so definitely, if you guys are looking at mediation, if you are looking at divorce, she's got the best guests on there, and she's gonna, well, I was on it.
You were my number 2 most listened to ever episode, you and Billetti. So yay.
Awesome. All right, today we are going to talk about a thing that happens to my clients all the time. I have had people with 5 to 8 lawyers through the divorce process, and every case is different. Every reason that they changed is different. But can you overlay that with some of the reasons that people do change divorce mid-process? I mean, divorce attorneys mid-process.
Sure. One of the first and probably most common reasons is because they picked the wrong lawyer in the first place. And when I say that, it's not uncommon, because I just had this conversation with someone I was coaching this morning. Just as in any profession, there are a million different kinds of doctors. There's a million different kinds of guys who are going to lay the tile in your bathroom. Some are good. Some come at it by doing the floor first. Some do the wall first, whatever that might be. There are a million different kinds of attorneys who handle family law cases. And you and your family may need one type of attorney, and you may, in the flurry of the beginning of the divorce, when often people aren't thinking that clearly and aren't that well educated on what the process actually looks like, they will go out and hire their cousin Tim's divorce attorney because she was a bulldog, or their next door neighbor's divorce attorney because he was really nice, or the one that they saw on the billboard downtown because they said they were going to fight for my rights, whatever that might be. And often, people are making that choice without making the decision based upon the type of practitioner that's going to work for them. And so they get halfway in and they're like, oh, this is just not working.
Right. And that's for sure one of the biggest mistakes. And we must not overlook that. But when it comes to my clients and people who are going through a narcissistic divorce, they're always hunting, looking for the lawyer in the crowd that knows what a narcissist is. And that is often a mistake, whether they do know or they don't know. That isn't what you're looking for in the divorce. And yet having some knowledge of high conflict situations is important. So how does that like play into, like, they didn't know about narcissists, so I'm going to fire them now?
Yeah. So you're 100% right. And I will say, it's hard to find an attorney who has the requisite knowledge to skillfully handle a high conflict and/or case involving a person with narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic tendencies. The problem is, first, most people, if they believe they're getting divorced from a narcissist, will run out and get the nastiest lawyer that they can find, right? They're looking for, this always makes me think of, there's a law firm out there that their tagline is, when the ring comes off, the gloves come off, right? Hate that, by the way, but they get a lot of business because there are a lot of people who are like, in that moment, I want someone who's going to fight for me. And who more wants someone who's going to defend them and protect them and fight for them than someone who's dealing with the truly horrific experience of trying to get divorced from a narcissist? Unfortunately, that's probably the worst attorney you could pick, is someone who is just going to go in there and litigate and drag it into, exactly, right? Conflict cycle, you're never going to out conflict a narcissist. They got plenty to spare. So the other issue is, people will run out and ask an attorney, well, do you understand high conflict? Do you know how to deal with high conflict? And if the attorney says yes, okay, I'll hire you. Mm-hmm. Not the best measure of whether someone truly understands narcissism, truly understands high conflict. I recommend actually asking, what experience they have and what training they have in dealing with that. You and I both know, and I mentioned earlier, Bill Eddy, have they gotten the training and I mean the professional, in dealing with a high conflict situation? But yes, I mean, it's very hard because attorneys and like anyone will say, sure, I fight in court all the time, I'm used to high conflict. Mm-hmm. There's a huge difference between that type of experience and dealing with the strategies in the management of a narcissistic divorce.
Absolutely. And almost the expectations. I mean, and I have a part in my book where I go, have they represented someone that was against a narcissist? What can you expect, right? Because if you have represented someone against a narcissist, they know they're going to pull this trick, this trick, this trick. They have the rule book. They know what's going to happen. But also, have they, actually represented someone that was a narcissist, because they're the ones pulling the strings during the divorce. And you also get an insight into what they're capable of by actually representing them. It's a small little piece of the puzzle, because that doesn't mean that they're going to know what you're talking about. Like, again, a lot of them are like, oh, sure, of course. And that's where a lot of my clients have issues. But I also see that they have issues when it comes to, I would say, communication. Mm-hmm. Their expectations of how quickly the lawyer will get back to them. I sent them an email 4 days ago, so I'm going to fire them, and they haven't answered me. They never answer me, or, whatever it is. Setting those things out at the beginning. What is your policy for this? And are you the one going to be making copies, or your paralegal going to be making copies? Just know what their office policies are, so that you don't get them to be your lawyer and find out that it's going to take a week before we get back to you. And then you patiently sit versus already off with their heads after 3 days because they haven't returned your call, and you're, I'm paying them. Well, not today, you're not, because they didn't open your email yet. So I see that as a big problem with so many clients.
It is, and it's actually, not the client's fault. I will say, the client is coming in and interviewing an attorney for a job, right? Many people come in with is the attorney going to take my case? That's not how this works. You're the one who's hiring a professional. But most people, you just did a service to everybody who's listening, who's about to go out and interview attorneys. Some of the questions to ask are, I know myself well enough that I need, immediate feedback from an attorney. So if I text you, are you going to get back to me quickly? What's your policy on that? Do you have a staff member who can I can run something by if I feel it's an emergency? Because you have to remember as well, when you are in the divorce litigation world, and when you are going through a divorce with a narcissist, everything kind of feels like an emergency. It really does. And it feels like it, right? You are being attacked. Your amygdala is fired up. You are drenched with all those hormones. But for your attorney, it's just one more thing. Yeah, I've got to make a phone call to the other attorney, or there's nothing they can do about it. It's not something that really falls within their purview. And so, yes, you have to, in the initial interview, ask about those parameters, set expectations. You, the client, set expectations for your attorney. And if your attorney's not going to, able to meet those, there's another attorney out there. Or if you're bound and determined to have that attorney because you really think they ring all the other bells, then talk to that attorney about what you can put in place around those communications. If I put SOS in the, Ray in the, subject line, will you get back to me within the fastest possible? If I don't put that in there, I'm willing to wait.
Right. And I think you said a valuable point, which is sometimes there's nothing they can do about it. Like, again, your ex just did something terrible and you're in panic mode and the kids aren't home yet. And oh my God, the lawyer is not going to be the one to sit there and mediate that for you at that moment. So they might read it and again, go, well, nothing I can do about that. That was yesterday and whatever, it must be solved. But even setting up a communication that even though you might not be able to do something, just reply, we'll handle this later. Like, get back to me so the client is not sitting there on eggshells waiting for another thing. Because again, as you said, divorcing a narcissist is hurry up and wait. And there's so much anxiety. There's so many things happening all at once that, you don't need your lawyer not getting back to you because whatever just happened was such a catastrophe for you. If you knew that they were, nothing we can do about that, we'll talk about it another time, would be a really good answer instead of nothing. So communicate that that's what you expect and set guidelines because you are their boss.
Yeah, you are their boss. Always remember that. You may not want them to take certain action after they explain to you the cost of that action, but you're still going to make that decision. And you just said something that really struck me, and I want to make a point because it kind of goes to both of the things we've been talking about. Selecting an attorney, how to know your attorney has experience of dealing with a high conflict divorce, and then this communication issue. One of the things when I was handling high conflict and truly high conflict divorce cases is if I was representing the party who was not the personality disordered person, I insisted that they have a coach, who was skilled in this particular area, high conflict divorce, dealing with a narcissist, because much of the communication that an attorney gets is much more appropriate for the coach because the coach can help. And so to me, a skilled high conflict divorce attorney has skilled high conflict divorce coaches that they recommend to their clients. And that would be something for someone to be looking for.
Nice. That's a really good point. And again, it's the emotional part and the legal part, and always separating them because again, the lawyer is not going to be able to, help you and whatever the situation is, but having a divorce coach that can talk you through it and go, okay, it sounds bad, but you're going to be okay. And this is what will happen when the lawyer gets back to us. This is what to expect. And they can breathe instead of sit there all night waiting for that lawyer email that didn't come.
Exactly. It's really a critical part of it. And to help the client to understand just what something, what can be done about certain things. I mean, I don't need to tell you that certain narcissistic behaviors you cannot do anything about. You can only learn to either manage them by how you respond to them or manage yourself. But you're not going to change the narcissist. And I'm not going to file a motion that's going to change the narcissist. And I'm not going to send a letter to the narcissist's attorney that's going to change the narcissist. And so a coach is also just an imperative part of that team. If someone truly wants to successfully get through a divorce in this situation, I truly think the indispensable person is the coach. The attorney's kind of the gunslinger who goes to court and manages that side of things.
Right. And deals with the other attorney. I mean,
yeah. Yep. But
much
not the management of the behaviors.
No, or the understanding of them,
Correct.
If they're going to do this, then, we should use that for this or this
Right.
done, just having someone that knows that is going to make the whole thing a lot smoother and emotionally keep them in such better health, because people who do not have coaches, everything is just, and then like, you just need a grain of salt and the whole thing explodes. So having someone that's going to regulate you, tell you to calm down, and here's what we do, and get you through that particular disaster, because there's another one coming tomorrow. So we can just,
or maybe in 10 minutes,
exactly.
Exactly. And that's, that it's critical to understand I always say this to people, the only important thing about understanding that you're divorcing a narcissist, or that the person you're getting divorced from has narcissistic behaviors and tendencies, it's not to know they're a narcissist. It's not so that you can call them one and all that. It is so that you understand that they have certain behaviors they're going to do over and over again. They're actually gift to you, very predictable, because they do the same things over and over again. And once you know it, and if you have someone to guide you, you'll actually know what to do about it. So it's your gift of control, believe it or not, is understanding who you're getting divorced from.
Absolutely. And the rules are different. And so
Totally
knowing what to expect and not reacting is going to be the key for sure. So,
yeah.
All right. So let's go back to,
yes.
Let's change lawyers in the midstream. So what are people entitled to? Are they entitled to records? Is there a turnover process? I had a client last week who's on her third lawyer, and the first lawyer talked to the second lawyer and she paid them both $1,000 to just turn over. Is that normal?
Yes. Let me be blunt on that one. Yes, when you hire an attorney, you pay for their time, or you pay for their staff's time, and that should be very clearly set out. I will say what you're entitled to. So that will vary by state. Each state's ethical codes have different rules about what an attorney must turn over and when that must be turned over to a client. The main difference, and I'll get granular here, is whether the attorney has been paid in full up to that point in time. There's a key factor. Some states will allow the attorney to hold on to that file until they get paid, because the reality is once the file is gone from their office, they very often do not get paid. So some states will allow that. Other states are like, no way. Client asked for their file. The file must be turned over within a certain reasonable period of time. And I'll explain that. Other states allow an attorney to put a lien on the file, essentially, which means if they're owed money, they get paid out of any eventual settlement before the client gets money. So it's all different depending on your state. Mm-hmm. It also is, what does the file mean, right? What is a client actually entitled to? The client is entitled to all of the pleadings that were filed, all of the, expert reports, all of the paperwork that's been received from the other side. What you're not entitled to is probably your attorney work product, our notes of sessions, our strategies, certain aspects that just, are our own personal, outlines of working. Are you entitled to the originals? It depends.
Okay.
Sometimes it's the copy, and then now you have to pay for either a digital copy or the hard copy, but someone's going to go and run. In my old days when I was practicing, I remember having a poor paralegal stand at the copy machine, ka-chung, 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 as a file was going through. Then I think you asked about the actual pass off to the other attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So different ways again with that. Some attorneys will just turn the file as it is, whatever it is we've talked about, and give it to them to take to whomever they choose to give it to.
Okay.
So if it's their next attorney, if they want to hold it at home, they want to throw it in the fire, it belongs to the client, not to the new attorney. So some attorneys are very, very particular that I will only release it to the client who I used to represent. Other attorneys, as a professional courtesy, will take it over to the other attorney, have the other attorney come over to the office, have it messengered, send it these days via a secure online portal, not an email. Thank you very much. In the world of hacking that we live in. So there's a variety of different ways, but if there is a meeting, a formal meeting of the two attorneys, to which there should be, frankly, to bring attorney 2 up to date, it's worth it, because attorney 2 trying to figure it out without a briefing from attorney 1, it's going to take them longer, and they're going to be charging you. Yes, you'll end up paying both attorneys likely for their time.
Their turnover. That makes sense. What you said in there, which I like grabbed my pen and I was like, oh wait, this is a good one. I have had clients, because of the narcissistic divorce process being so long and drawn out, that they have hopped because they owe the money. So when you said that, I was like, yep, this one I owe a $50,000 bill to, but eventually I'll get it when the house sells and the whole thing settles, but I don't have the 50,000 and they want a certain amount, but I can start this lawyer for 10,000 and start with that. And then they hop for that financial reason. So I didn't think about that until you just said that.
Yeah.
Because then again, the lawyer can withhold that and hold the records, and that makes
very often. And I mean, I know attorneys, we are not the most sympathetic of people. Most people are not like, oh, poor attorney. But consider that particular case you just talked about. I owe that attorney $50,000. That attorney has already put that work in, has already done it. And when that client walks, that attorney who has to pay the other attorneys that work for them, the other staff, their rent, whatever might be going on, is likely, without some sort of security, not going to see that money. And so it becomes a business situation for an attorney in those circumstances. And it's actually a rather well-known thing that clients will attorney hop when funds are tight. There are other options. And if a client will sit down with their attorney and be upfront about this, something like, I'll get a lien, I'll get paid out of eventual settlement. There's a lot of different ways it can be managed.
That's good to know.
Trying to do it under the table is probably the least popular way. You're also not likely to get a lot of that professional courtesy from attorney 1 to attorney 2 when you leave attorney 1 hanging in the lurch. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And again, as you said, if you think about attorney 1 teaching attorney 2, like, hey, we went down this rabbit hole, it didn't make any sense. This is now attorney 2, if you don't have that transition conversation, then attorney 2 is going to start with the whole file, bring up the $20,000 just to read it before you even start. So that couple thousand, if it is that much, to turn over is so much worth it, because you're not wasting attorneys 2 time.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And it's, there's a lot of reasons for changing attorneys in midstream. And I will tell you, in high conflict divorces, in cases involving narcissists, it's really, really common for there to be multiple attorneys on both sides. It is very difficult. I have been the attorney coming in 3 down the road. It is really hard to pick up the ball and run with it, and not occasionally run in the wrong direction or in a direction that's already been run. If somebody is not guiding you and giving you the benefit of the wisdom of the practitioners who came before you. So, if at all possible, I would encourage people to maintain a good relationship with each attorney along the way. There's a lot of reasons to change. when I got fired, so to speak, by a client, I don't take that personally. I think everyone's entitled to the attorney that works for them. And I don't mean works like does work for them. I mean the one who suits their needs best. And if it wasn't me, and I did my best, but you know what? I bet you there's somebody out there who is going to be good for you. I'll even help you find that person. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's a huge disconnect between an attorney and client.
Yeah, and that is often the case, because I think in my case, in my clients' cases, is they are just looking for anyone to hear them. It doesn't matter if it's the lawyer, the coach, their psychiatrist, it doesn't matter. They just want to be heard. And again, you're asking someone who is here to separate a legal contract and figure out your money and figure out your children to sit here and have this emotional empathy for what's going on and the terrible things that are happening. So in comes the coach or someone that's going to be able to support you. And, as I see, and as a coach of victims of abuse that are not going through a divorce or victims going through a divorce, the thing that we see and the differences between someone that has a coach is they can so much more make it through without all of as much drama, like because they can emotionally regulate themselves and not go down that rabbit hole of, no support, no help. So yeah.
Well, it's exactly why when I was doing high conflict divorce, I insisted that the client have a coach. I know coaches, that I know can do a good job in that area, because honestly, I've now done and dealt with enough high conflict and personality disordered cases. And by the way, let me just point out, it's not always the other party who is personality disordered. Yeah. I've dealt with my share of attorneys who are personality disordered as well. Every strata of society has people with these issues, but, I know enough about it to be able to converse with my client and try to be helpful. But the conversations and the being heard, that's a coach.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted people to hear in this message, because they mistaken it. And it's a very expensive learning curve where you're not going to get any help and you're going to be paying them $500 an hour.
Yep.
They're like, well, that sounds too bad, but okay, thanks, bye. They're like, whoa, so
I used to tell clients, as a human being, my heart hurts for you. It truly does. I want you to know that. As your attorney, there is nothing I can do about that.
Right.
I'm not going to change that person. I can't file a pleading to make them a better parent. I can't, I feel for you, but I can't, that's not a legal issue. Right. And, I'll be honest with you, it's frustrating for the attorneys as well. We want to help our clients. The hardest clients in the world to help are the ones who are in this situation.
Absolutely.
Because it's not a part of our skill set.
Yeah. And again, we're asking the dentist to take out your, finger. Could you remember you're Mr. Dentist? No, different surgery, different doctor, different lawyers. And again, in this process, it takes a team. It really does. And the more help you can get, and there's so many people out there that can't afford a coach because they're barely able to afford a lawyer. But there are support groups, there's Facebook groups, there's places that people can get others to kind of help soothe them if they are in that elevated stage.
Your book, if I can just say, I've told you, one of the reasons why I am a huge supporter of your book is you've taken years of coaching and support, and it's all in there. So no matter what you people out there are dealing with in that particular moment and need some support and understanding, it's in the pages of that incredibly comprehensive book. So I want to say that I agree with you 100%. Coaching is expensive. Attorneys are expensive. This process is expensive, but get the level of help that you can afford, because trying to do it without support is the worst possible case scenario. You have so much more control over this crazy process than you think, but it all stems from education, knowledge, and not engaging with their behaviors. But you have to understand them to know not to engage.
And you have to know which battles to fight. because
Yes.
they can throw all these false allegations and all this stuff at you in rapid fire. And
Mhm.
it's like a video go. You can't keep up with it. It
No.
too many. And so what matters is what you want to know. Like, okay, they just lied that you did this. Well, that won't matter, but this will. And
Right.
no difference helps alleviate that 10 that didn't matter, so that you're not overwhelmed by all of the disasters that are happening rapid fire.
Yeah. I mean, it's truly the key to surviving this high conflict divorce or situation with some sanity on the other side, is understanding, I like how you phrase it, where to engage and where to let it go. And unfortunately, people who are caught up in the hamster wheel of it, they just engage left and right. They engage with everything. Any ball that comes, they're trying to hit it. And a lot of them, you can just let them go because they don't mean anything.
Mhm.
But you do need to know which ones you have to dive after. And
Exactly.
that is a coach.
Emotionally, they mean something, but they don't in the court. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
your emotional brain over here, legal stuff over here, and then get the help in both arenas.
Well, and that's a good point about the attorney situation, right? A lot of clients get frustrated with their attorneys, thinking their attorney's not fighting for them or not doing a good job for them because they're not dealing with some of those things that happen.
Right.
They're not dealing with them because they're not in the legal arena. They're not something that is dealt with there. And it's unfortunate because you need your attorney in those situations and you need a good relationship, yet this misunderstanding maybe of what an attorney can and cannot do and where they can be effective and not can drive a wedge between. That's another reason, by the way, why people have more than one attorney often is they misunderstand the role of what their attorney can actually even do under these circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, it's if there's nothing, I send you an email, Mr. Lawyer, and there's nothing you can do about it, or it's not going to be applicable, just shoot me an email back and go, we got a code word, not important, whatever it is, boom. And then it's not that anticipation and anxiety over, but I didn't hear, but I didn't hear. Well, you're not going to hear, but that one, if you're the kind of person that needs to hear it, you need to set this up with your lawyer. Hey, if it's not important, let me know so I'm not on eggshells for the next week.
Right. It's a very good point, because an attorney in their mind might just be like, well, we've already talked about this twice. When it happened the 2 other times, they'll remember. But, always remember, when you're going through this type of divorce, you're always in that heightened state of like, fight or flight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have 2 more questions to do
Yes.
with the end of this. So are there vulnerabilities in people changing lawyers? Because a lot of people get very upset and scared. I'm going to look like I've changed lawyers 3 times. I'm a loser. Is this judge going to judge me differently? Are there vulnerabilities?
Yes. And a client should be very aware of them before they make the decision.
Okay.
The first vulnerability is not so much that the attorney or that the judge is going to say this person's a loser, they've had 3 attorneys. Judge probably doesn't even care. But in the legal and court system, people who run through a lot of attorneys tend to be seen through the lens of being high conflict, whether they're the person who's high conflict or their spouse is the person who's high conflict. You can just immediately, I'll just tell you, and again, I'm sort of pulling the curtain back here, and some of my colleagues may not like this, but if I see that someone's had 3 or 4 attorneys in a case, I'm thinking, is it them or is it this person? Is it the other side, or is this person the one who's high conflict? What's going on with that? That's one. So that's a perception situation. The other is actually a significant factor that should be considered. It depends on where you are in your case.
Okay.
If you are close to any type of hearing, or even worse, a trial, and you want to switch counsel at that late date, you could very well be disadvantaging your case, because your new attorney, we just talked about it, has to get up to speed and has to understand everything that's gone on, including nuance, before they can walk into that courtroom and do a good job for you. And, maybe this is where that perception of the judge is thinking, well, that person's had 3 attorneys. When your new attorney goes into court and says, hey, Your Honor, I'm new. I'm going to ask that you continue this hearing or trial so I have a little time. If they're your first new attorney, the judge is going to be much more inclined to give them time. If they're your fourth new attorney, the judge is going to be like, yeah, and then when I give you this break, that person's going to have a new attorney and you won't even be the one doing it. So no, we've given enough continuances. So those are two of the really significant factors that I see at play. The other factor that I would just point out is there is going to be a financial, right? We've talked about that. And there is going to be a new learning curve with your new attorney. Just the two of you getting into your flow. That may be a good thing though. If you've gotten into a bad flow with your other attorney, it may be great that you're getting into a new understanding of how things work with your new attorney, but time is not always at your, under your control.
That is such an important lesson. I am so glad we asked that question because what are the risks? That's such an important thing. We're going to make sure everybody knows this. Now, we kind of covered this already, but this is the last question. When people end the divorce process and there's files, are they entitled to them? Because some people are like, I want all my files. And I think we've already kind of said that you're probably not entitled to all the lawyer notes and strategies and things like that. But are they entitled to these things, and should they expect that they have to pay for that? Because again, it's now the lawyer's time to pull this stuff together and get it to you.
Yes. So and again, I hate to be the lawyer in the room, but it depends on where you are. Each state has different file retention rules, but generally I will say, yes, if it's your file or you want, things out of your file, you're entitled to those, whether it be copies or whether it be the originals. You should be able to get them at any time. If they have to be copied, there may be a copy fee involved because anytime anyone touches your file in a law firm, you're going to get charged. But at the end of your case, different attorneys will have different practices and protocols in place. Many states, and I frankly just think it's good practice to take all original documents that happen to be in my client's file. So back in the old days, we used to get actual tax returns and actual bank statements. I would have those all packaged up and immediately returned to the client. I don't want those things in my office. I didn't want them in my files. I didn't want them to get lost. They are documents that belong to my client. If we had copies of those things, we would either scan them and shred the copies or ethically destroy them. And we would inquire of the client what they wanted to do with the rest of it. Most of them would say, I don't want the file. Everything these days is available online. Some people do want their file. And again, that's a matter of then copying what's in the file. The attorney needs to keep a copy. The client may want one. And then just everybody should understand, we're not obligated to hold, if you didn't pick up your file, we're not obligated to hold on to it for the rest of our lives and your lives. Every state has a certain number of years after which a file can be destroyed. That varies. So you should know that. In fact, in my retainer agreement used to have in Connecticut where I practiced, it was 7 years. We had to hang on to things. So it said, I am required to hang on to your file for 7 years. If you want it at any time, let me know. At the end of 7 years, understand that I will ethically have, we would have them burned taken care of, and just so that people would know. Other states require us to send a notice to the client before we do that. It depends.
Right. Well, I'm going to give everyone a little kibble of secrecy here, but Susan was my divorce attorney in my first divorce, not my narcissist divorce, but when I was divorcing the narcissist, we had to get the original, because they didn't believe that I had the original post prenup, and you sent people into your basement to go and find them, and we found them, and it was 9 years later. But had I not had that, and again, the copies I had were completely originals and signed and all that stuff, but they wanted your copy for some reason, and so because they thought I forged it.
Right.
So having that at your dispense was you saved my life, right? So that was really,
thank goodness I had it. And I will say with that particular issue, it's prenups tend to be given out in multiple copies that are all originals. But yes, I'm sure in your case, the allegation, as I recall, was made that you had doctored it, the version you had. And when my version as your attorney, officer of the court doesn't lie, was exactly the same as yours, I was verifying your credibility, as well as, the court then adopted that provision. So I was so glad I had it. I still remember getting on the phone with that judge. So
I remember you were in the courtroom, you're on the speaker talking the whole thing. So I totally remember
these days I'd be on the Zoom screen, but yeah.
On a big screen in the courtrooms, because they didn't have those then. So it's been such an incredible conversation and so important for our listeners. So thank you so much for joining us. And everybody go follow Susan, go listen to her podcast. You are going to get so much information if you're going through this divorce process. She's your girl. And get my book too. Yay!
Absolutely. Get the book. Listen to her podcast episode on divorce and beyond.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Susan.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tracy.
Wasn't that excellent? I'm so excited to have Susan here every single time. And not just because she was my first divorce attorney, but because she's so darn smart and so willing to give us that insider lawyer information that we really needed to find out what the process is when you have to start with another lawyer. So this is Tracy Malone. Again, someone told me last week, I didn't know you coach people. And I was like, I have a whole YouTube channel, really? So I thought I'd keep trying to remind people to know that I am a divorce coach, that I am a narcissistic abuse divorce coach, and that I can help you through this process. And again, we highly recommend divorcing your narcissist. You can't make this shit up. It is going to give you everything from understanding what to expect and how to protect yourself. I have a section in here called the gray areas of a divorce decree. And these are the areas that the narcissist tends to exploit. So let's get this book in your hands if you're going through a divorce with a narcissist. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.